Let me know when you guys are ready. One second. You're live.
Board meeting Tuesday, March 4th, 2025, 7 PM, Town Hall. Wish of the board.
Motion to open?
Seconded.
Motion made and seconded to open. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. So moved. Okay, tonight's agenda, we have a public hearing on some 2025 zoning changes. We have 181R School Street discussion, possible vote for the permit application for the subdivision plan. And then we have our planner update. Nothing reasonable anticipated, and then that's it. So, let's get started. We'll go to the public hearing first. Public hearing, 2025 zoning changes. A public hearing in accordance with Mass General Law, Chapter 40, Section 5, to consider amendments and additions to the zoning bylaws as follows. We have 10 of them here. I think we'll just go one at a time. We have representatives here for a few, and then Sam, you're here for the majority of the rest of them? Okay, cool. All right. Number 1, to amend Article 7, battery energy storage systems to correct clerical errors.
Hello. Is this
Hi,
thing
Sam.
on?
Hey, Sam.
Green light?
On? Yep.
Green light, yep.
Cool. All right, the battery storage bylaw isn't super interesting. We did find some errors in there that we wanted to correct. The only change we had, and I made it because it was a suggestion from the other community I work in, was Section C applicability that lists specific capacities for smaller battery storage systems that would be not affected by the bylaw, and we just increased that to 100 kilowatt hours. And the reason for that is as NFPA 855 changes, we just didn't want to have to keep coming back and forth for potential battery changes if they change, because we mirrored NFPA 855. The reality is we'll never see those small systems over 100 kilowatt hours. So we felt it was a good safety net just to throw in there so that we wouldn't have to keep amending a code.
Sam, is that the Section C1?
Yes,
Lead acid.
applicability,
Okay, the 70, all the 70, the 270 watt, both of them, the lead?
70,
acid?
70, 30, 20, and 20, yes. So with those types of batteries, typically you're not going to see some of them anymore. Most of them are going to your lithium ion. And a 30 kilowatt is plenty big. When you get into 855 in NFPA, it starts getting into building fireproof enclosures, and it gets really burdensome for a homeowner pretty quickly. So the fact is they're never going to hit that threshold, but we felt as battery technology changed, it would be smart just to put a buffer in there to allow for, things to be not considered under this bylaw and just to be regulated by NFPA 855 and 780 CMR, the state building code.
So on the copy we have, it shows 70. Is it going up to 100, you said? Or is it went from 100 down to 70?
Oh, I think
think it should be 70 to 100, right?
Yeah, it should be 70 to 100. Did Annie take that out?
No, but it's not.
It's not shown on there.
That's for the.
Maybe we
lead
didn't.
and the nickel.
Yeah.
Okay, and that's why I'm checked, because everything,
yeah.
I have the PDF document up and everything was marked as red that was changing, and that's not on here as changed, so at least now we can know, call it, so the 70 you want to go to 100?
I had, but looks like maybe Annie struck it.
Okay.
So we
That's
can
okay.
change it right here.
We can follow up.
Yeah, yeah. That would be the only change. I believe it's still in there. I'm not sure why this current copy doesn't show it, but yes, that would be the intent.
So the numbers for the 4 different categories, it's 100, 130, 20?
Yeah, there's 5 of them in there. I don't know if yours went on to the next page,
Oh, right.
but
and then
yeah.
20, 10, right.
Yep, so all would just go to 100, and that way
Oh,
it
all
would
of
give
those
us,
things would go to 100?
Yeah.
Okay,
Every,
correct.
yeah.
And that would exempt batteries of 100 kilowatt hours or less from this large capacity bylaw.
Because you're changing from meet to exceed.
I'm changing from what?
From meet to exceed, just below that?
Yes.
Okay.
yeah, I see.
Yeah, that was one of the typos that we saw in there, not even a typo, just a wrong word used.
Right.
Yeah, protocols was up there. The red is definitely helpful. So the change in and then meet is going to exceed.
Right.
And then,
Yep.
I'm sure you're going to the next, you have under,
Yeah, general requirements. Early on, we had 12-foot wide. We talked to fire, they'd prefer an 18-foot wide access. So we were trying to accommodate their wishes. They said, you know, they can get down 12, but if it gets overgrown, they're gonna have trees and branches scraping the trucks, which I thought that was a pretty easy adjustment.
yep. And that's just a 16-inch to 16 feet, right? Is all that is?
Yeah,
Clerical
we-
stuff, yep.
We had the wrong character in there, so that was pretty easy.
Minimum 8-foot high fence.
Correct.
Is it wood or,
Doesn't matter, just, it's really just to keep, typically they end up doing chain link with the slats in it, just to keep anyone from climbing it, or they'll do the 1.25" chain link that's non-scalable. So, and that's something too, that depending on the type of fence, with the large battery storage systems, it does give the purview to the planning board to determine if for some reason you don't like whatever fence they're using, you can make that determination. We just put in there the height of the fence.
That's clerical. Do you see change from the 50 to 70 kilowatts on the large-scale fire test? Under,
That's page 7.
under battery energy storage,
So
under
it's,
G.
G4.
Yep, and that was a typo. The UL 99540A fire test was for different capacity than we had originally put in there.
And I'm just going through these to make sure that if you have any additionals that weren't caught, like the 100 kilowatt. Did you have any others besides those?
No, everything else was, like I said, very minor.
The
just-
clerical-
Yeah, that was the only change we made, and it was, again, it was just out of trying to not bring this back again anytime soon if we can help it. Usually your large-scale batteries are massive, so, and those in-home batteries are nowhere near that 100 kilowatt anyway.
Excellent. You guys have any questions on any of that for the number one?
Nope.
All right. Pat, you good?
Yes.
Cool. All right, moving on, number 2. To amend Article 6, Section 1, floodplain overlay district with current FEMA maps and the NFIP requirements to change the permitting authority from the planning board to floodplains administrator.
So 2 things here. Most of the changes were made because they're a requirement of the NFIP, the National Flood Insurance Program. If we fail to make them, we do not get to stay in the program, and anyone in town who has a house or property in the floodplains no longer gets coverage.
Sounds
So-
important.
Yeah, I mean, it's one of those do it or we're not going to play anymore. So
Yeah.
the lift really isn't huge on most of what they've added. Most of that's mirrored in the building code anyway, as far as elevating structures, flood-proofing them, elevating mechanical systems. Some of it was some cleanup because we had language in our old bylaw like the flood boundary and floodway map. We don't have that here. We don't have those types of floodplains, so that's deleted. Or we have like zones A and E. Where are we? Oh, the flood hazard boundary map, again, we don't use that here. We use either the NFIP maps or a flood hazard map for building officials related to coastal dunes. So pretty unexciting stuff overall, unless you're really into floods. The section that was changed, and I talked to DCR about changing this. Initially, we in a lot of communities had put the floodplain permitting authority with the planning board. Most, in talking with DCR, found that most planning boards aren't really well-versed in floodplain regulations. I made the assumption of that here. Unless, unless you really, really want it. The nice thing is after working for a while with DCR to develop something, what ends up happening is with giving the floodplain administrator the authority to issue the permits, part of the conditions are a stricter compliance through a engineer. What that does, although you're now sending someone for additional engineering than what they'd normally need, that additional engineering cost would be less or about the same as a filing with planning, and it would shave a good amount of time off them. So DCR was very happy with this because it makes it more cost-effective, actually makes the process more stringent in the documentation, and it streamlines it to move it forward quicker. So unless you really, really want it, I'm glad to give it to you if you do. But it does hopefully make things easier for folks in the floodplain. And here we have, I want to say 46 or 48 homes in the floodplain, so it's not significant.
All on the river?
Yeah, pretty much all on the river. There's a couple inland ones where they just get clipped with some still water flooding, but it's almost all riverine. So
Are you the floodplain administrator?
I unfortunately am, yes.
You can keep it, as far as I'm concerned.
I agree.
I'm good.
You really excited about doing this?
Appreciate you, Sam.
Again, most of it actually falls under the building code anyway.
Sure.
So getting
There's a lot of
additional-
duplicate.
additional documentation from an engineer only helps me out as the building official, which, again, DCR was looking at it and thinking that this could be a good model for other communities because it does hit all the marks as far as making it more cost-effective, faster process,
He's gotta deal with
and
it
more
anyways.
stringent.
Is there any
Gas meters,
is there any downside that you can
electrical and all that
conceive
other
of?
crap, so.
Not really. I mean, other than to me personally, that has to spend more time with it.
Right, true, fair.
No.
Okay.
I think all around, I tried to look at it from a homeowner and developer standpoint as well as enforcement.
Sure.
It actually does make my job as enforcement easier. It makes it just as cost-effective or more cost-effective for the homeowner, both in what they literally spend out of pocket, but also from a time standpoint.
Sure.
And again, DCR, and the NFIP folks aren't looking to make it easier, or, I shouldn't say that. That's not their goal. Their goal is protection of structures in the floodplain.
Right.
And if this makes it easier while doing that, they were pretty happy with it.
Got it.
All right, good.
Yeah, and the rest was just language that they gave us and we had to implement in order to stay in the program. And then there was a lot of removal of information because their offices moved, things like that. So they, instead of putting an actual address in, they just put their offices, so they don't have to keep
Makes sense.
changing addresses, yeah.
Is that what leads into the Article 2 of the flood intermediate regional? Is that, nope, not yet.
Which one?
The definition, yeah, the definition, to amend Article 2 definitions by deleting the definition flood intermediate regional, as it is no longer a term used in the bylaw.
Correct.
Okay. A lot of red.
Yeah, it's, that section's riddled with red there,
It's a lot of red on that
Yeah.
one, yeah.
but bringing it up to spec, so.
Yep. Okay. And we are down to. Definition, amend Article 2, so that was number 3. Number 4, to amend Article 2 definitions, dwelling, single family, to better align the state definition.
So that goes with the accessory dwelling units, and with the, I think it mirrors also the building code, but it definitely mirrors the accessory dwelling unit definition that's in place now for the new regulations.
Past where I want to be. Gotcha. That's the floodway. All right. And then to amend number 5, to amend Article 9, Section 2A, shared parking facilities to expand the radius of allowable parking lots to be used toward parking requirements.
That one's not mine, but I can speak to it, or unless you want to. Essentially, we have a perimeter of our business district at the center of town. This would widen that circle that we look at for adequate parking for our businesses, which would include the lot up behind the water department and, up to the, what's the park over here?
Perry Park.
Perry Park, thank you. So that businesses could actually use that as part of their potential off-site parking, which would alleviate some of the pressure on businesses downtown to show, or that they meet our current bylaw.
And I
Right,
think
so we
this was
wouldn't have-
something that
Yeah.
the zoning board of appeals dealt with.
Yeah, I think that's been sorely needed, so. Thank you.
You guys have any thoughts, issues, concerns on that one?
Nope.
No, I'm all for it, I think.
It sounds like it would be,
500 feet is not doable with the downtown situation for any business. so.
Correct.
it would seem like it
Not
would
in
make
Elm
it,
Park anyways.
Yeah, exactly.
What's that, Pat?
it would seem like it would make it easier for businesses to develop there and something that's sorely needed there. So I'm very much in favor.
Excellent. All right. Number 6, to amend Article 7, Section 1, accessory apartments to be in compliance with the new Mass General Law.
So as of February 2nd of this year, a new state requirement under the Affordable Homes Act went into place, requiring all cities and towns to allow attached or detached ADUs up to 900 square feet in space, or half the existing principal dwelling unit, whichever is less, as of right, eliminating the involvement of zoning if you meet all the requirements, essentially making most of our bylaw no longer legal. Things like owner occupancy or parking requirements, number of bedrooms, anything, it's all off the table and regulated through CMR 71, which gives you a whole listing of what we need to meet. The only part of our bylaw I left in there was the special permit piece, which allows us to exceed the square footage of the 900 square feet, if we so desire. Other than that, we're pretty much waiting for a model bylaw for the towns to come down from Housing and Livable Communities and have that approved by the AG's office for what we can use for language if we choose to allow larger or different configurations. I figured in the meantime, to avoid confusion, we just delete our bylaw pretty much in its entirety because the state law supersedes it anyway. So to have the state law there and then our bylaw there could only lead to confusion. So I figured we're better off just striking the portions that are no longer applicable, which is all of it, and leave the one piece that is, which is special permits. And
So
not,
this is done, this is done with the concept of get us into compliance with the rules as they are now, understanding that they'll probably have to be amended further downstream because there'll be a kind of like an evolving text of what is sort of the model bylaw.
I fully expect next spring this will be back before us.
Sure.
If
This
we
is
do
probably an interim.
nothing, it has the same effect. Everything that isn't allowable under state law gets overridden by state law anyway. So whether we delete it or not doesn't really make a difference, other than people looking at our bylaw will see requirements that are no longer valid.
And by doing this, they'll see that we're at least trying to keep up with the law as it's changing.
Yep.
Okay.
Everybody's a landlord.
Thank you, Sam. I think you're good there, right, with the 1 through 6?
I think. I don't know. What else you got?
Number 7, to add section 4 to be titled multifamily overlay district to Article 6 overlay districts to comply with state law. I'm just going to read all 3 because I know you're going to cover all 3. And this is here for 7, 8, and 9. So I just read 7. Number 8, to add a new paragraph G to Article 3, Section 3, description of the district boundaries to add multifamily overlay district, that MFOD acronym. And then number 9, to amend Article 3, Section 1, paragraph B, zoning districts identified to add multifamily overlay district, MFOD.
I apologize, it's taking us a second. That's all.
And Innis Associates is here for a presentation. Like, pay close attention, because someone's going to have to get up in front of town hall and speak. Jason. I like Jason.
Good evening.
Hi.
So we are here to talk about the MFOD overlay district. I just want to give a little bit of context of how we reached here and what the highlights of the zoning languages are. And also there are a few decisions that all the planning board members need to make tonight, hopefully. So just want to give some context on that. So we'll talk about the timeline and what the zoning study that we have undertaken is, what the state law requirements for Groveland are, what the text of the new district means, and what the optional sites for this district would be. We have been working very closely with the town staff, Rebecca and Annie, for the past few months to make this possible. We started this project in around July. In November, we introduced it to the public for the first time. We ran through a background of what Section 3A means, what the implications for Groveland are, and what sites are suitable to introduce the zoning. In January, we came back with housing types that might be suitable for these selected sites and what that would mean and what that would look like. And today we are at the planning board hearing. So this zoning study came from a context of Groveland having done the comprehensive plan and the housing production plan, and identifying a need that Groveland needs more housing and accessible housing. The two parts of that is the aligning with the community's evolving housing needs. The second part of the zoning study is to come up with best options to comply with the state law. Today we are focusing on the second part. So to comply with the state law, Groveland must meet the requirements of an adjacent small community, which is it needs to introduce a district which allows for multifamily as of right. It needs to have a minimum unit capacity of 130 units. unit capacity does not mean it needs to build 130 units. It just needs to allow for it, and a minimum density requirement of 15 dwelling units per acre. So just as a context.
I just want to also clear that it's not a 130-unit building that needs to be built either.
Yes,
It's just
exactly.
130,
Yes.
to let the public know.
So currently, Groveland's existing zoning do not allow multifamily dwellings in any of the zoning districts. So none of the options are actually compliant. But by allowing multifamily as of rights and then lowering the minimum lot area in certain areas, different options starts to be compliant, and we will come back to it in the second phase where we introduce what the options for the sites are. So what the zoning text actually introduces, it introduces a multifamily overlay district, which and then because we haven't identified an actual area for where this zoning would go, the description of the district boundaries would come in later. This zoning district has the purpose, establishment, definitions, permitted use, the dimensional standards, development standards, affordability requirement, and it also has site plan review. So I'm just going to quickly run through the key highlights of what this means. So the purpose of this district is basically to allow multifamily as of right so that the town complies with the state law. It's an overlay district, so whichever area it goes on, the base district are still intact, but if you pick a use that is in the overlay district, then the regulations for this overlay district would apply to whatever use you select. So underneath the base district are all still intact, and you can still do the permitted uses in that. There are a few new definitions that are being introduced, including what an area medium income is and what the different types of multifamily housing is. I want to asterisk the multifamily housing types because they would also depend on what area we pick. And by we, I mean you all. The different permitted uses include duplexes, townhomes, triplex, allows for single-family conversions, and then a medium multifamily building, like 4 to 7 units, an 8 to 10 unit residential building, and then cottage housing. The number next to the use is the minimum lot size required for this use. And again, the housing types will be finalized once we actually have an area picked out. Then we go on to the dimensional standards. Again, the lot size would be picked after the geographical area is picked out. Frontage and dwelling units is highlighted because that again depends upon which area this district goes into. The setback, height, lot coverage are existing from the R2 and R3 zoning districts, so nothing is drastically changed. We also introduced affordability requirement. This is an optional requirement. It triggers after if there's new development or substantial rehabilitation or expansion, reconstruction, or a conversion with developments more than 10 units. We also have introduced a site plan review. You might notice it says permitting authority because the permitting authority is yet to be determined. And this process triggers if you propose any development which has more than 4 dwelling units, 4 or more dwelling units. This brings us to the main portion, which is where would this district go into, and I'm going to have my colleague Jimmy introduce the calculations for how we came up with these districts.
Can I stop you and ask one question about the affordability? I think currently we have a situation where when we do affordability requirements, they can either make a portion of the units comply, or they can make a payment.
Mm-hmm.
Is this similar to that, or so it would have the same options?
Yes.
Okay, all right, thank you.
Of course.
Thank you, Supriya. Like Supriya said, my name is Jimmy. I am the spatial analyst at Innes Associates, so I did a bunch of the modeling and analysis for Groveland regarding these potential MFOD sites. So here are the 5 sites. We have Washington and Maine in red in the center, Union to Gardner up in the upper right-hand corner, followed by Salem Street in the bottom left, School in Pleasant right next to Union to Gardner, and Perry Park. So these vary in acreage, and as you'll see, the they have different types of existing structures there. So what you're seeing on the left-hand side is the existing housing types that already exist within these boundaries. And on the right is just an aerial of what the site locations look like. So I'll go through these 5 and we can go back to any if you have any questions or want to look at one or the other even further. But this is Washington and Main Street. So for this option, currently it's in District R2, where your minimum lot size is 30,000 square feet. We're proposing to reduce this down to 20,000 square feet, and that's just so the model can model these properties for unit capacity regarding 3A model. The reason we lower those is to match the existing lot sizes that are already existing in the area. For option 2, to Union to Gardner Streets, you see again the housing types in the aerial. And for this, the changes to the existing zoning, currently it's in District R3, but we're proposing to reduce that minimum lot area to 10,000 square feet to match what's existing in the, on the ground currently. And the next we have Salem Street, and your existing housing types and area of the district. And again, this zoning district is R2, but we're proposing to reduce that down to 10,000 square feet to match what's on the ground. And then option 4 is School and Pleasant Streets. This is currently in District R3, but we're proposing to reduce that down to 5,000 square feet. And next is Perry Park, which is your smallest district option. It's currently in R2, and we're proposing to reduce that minimum lot size down to 5,000 square feet so it can be modeled. So here is the unit capacity of the districts. So what we do in this analysis is we take all these parcels, we put them into the model to see how many units can be built on this property or how much the zoning can allow for. So it goes from left to right in terms of unit capacity. So on the lower end, you have Perry Park, which is 140 units. You're getting 24 dwelling units per acre. Salem Street increases slightly. You get 150 units, 18 dwelling units per acre. And then School and Pleasant Streets increases to 151 units. Dwelling units per acre is 23. And then Union to Gardner is 182 units with 15 dwelling units per acre, all the way up to Washington and Main Street, which is 294 units and 18 dwelling units per acre. So those are the districts we have for you guys, and we can open the room for discussion.
So the idea is that all of these districts are currently compliant with Section 3A, the state law. We need to shortlist or select one of these.
Just grab it, please, just so people can hear you.
Sorry about that.
Sorry. So all of these 5 sites are currently compliant under Section 3A. The goal is to shortlist them or select them today, and that's open for discussion so that we can apply the zoning to one of those districts that would make the town compliant with Section 3A.
So is there a benefit to choose one over the others for any particular reasons? Are there things that you guys see that would mitigate in favor of supporting one of these zones instead of another?
I don't see a benefit of one over the other. I think it's preference for the planning board and the citizens as a whole. As you can see, if you choose lower acreage, you get dwelling units per acre that are smaller versus the higher acreage where you get more unit capacity that can be built out. Groveland's minimum requirement per the state is just 130 units. So, these more than qualify.
Would there, since you guys have been looking at this, would there be one that you would recommend over the others? If you had to, evaluate them versus one another?
I would say when I was doing this analysis, Perry Park, School and Pleasant Streets, and Union to Gardner Streets seem like great options to me because they're by your public transit. The Miva bus runs through them. Whereas Washington and Main and Salem Street are kind of off the transit routes. And those would be kind of more car-dependent residents living there who would travel to, either commuter rails or just use their car in general. So yeah, I think those locations within the core of downtown would be good options.
Does the fact that Union to Gardner is kind of rectangular and sort of, does that mitigate in favor of that one, or not really?
No, shape doesn't really play too much of a role in it.
They adopt, the town adopts this, do we have to build? Or is this just an overlay?
Just an
It's just an
overlay.
overlay. Yeah,
Yeah.
I think that's one of the misconceptions, in town as well, that there's gonna be approval of this means all of a sudden we're gonna see developments popping up left and right, and that's.
Well, that's why I'm asking the question.
I think that it's a good question to ask, because, that's not necessarily the case. We're just putting the overlay in so that changes down the road, we're allowed for it, and that also brings us into state compliance.
You, go ahead.
Yeah, I was gonna say, it's not a mandate to build, it's just to allow zoning, to allow for that many units in the model to be there.
I had a question. So when you did the analysis, you were looking at what the current lot sizes were within your mapping. Do you have the numbers around how many of the lots already meet that recommendation, that recommended 5,000 square foot, whether it's going to drop into 5 to 10 to 20, to see the total number of lots that fall within a shape in whatever zone it is, and then we would know what number, how many lots we're actually changing. Like if
Yeah, yeah.
there's, 100 lots in Union Garden Street, but 75% of them already meet the requirement that we have to drop to, not you guys, but we would have to drop to, say, 5,000, whether it's 5,000 square foot, 10,000 square foot. How many already meet that?
Yeah, exactly. We have those numbers.
Okay, awesome.
Yep.
That'd be good to have, to show.
Of course, yeah.
Then I have another question. Developer comes in, buys a half-acre lot. Does that mean he's gonna throw 5 houses in there? If it goes down to 5,000 square feet? Is that the ability to do that? I mean,
If he meets.
That question needs to
He has
be
to meet
asked.
all the other requirements of frontage and things like that as well, so. But he could, I mean, if he owns the lot, he's allowed to build based on the zoning.
Yeah. Well, also, as you can see, these aren't necessarily lots with no dwellings on them currently.
Right.
So there's not gonna be,
no, well,
come passing, someone's not gonna walk up with application to build right away because there's currently structures there.
but the structure, could be conducive to another 4 houses around it. Happens all the time.
Yeah, we ain't gonna fit that with the setbacks we have and everything else that's in
Right.
place. I mean, you got a half acre, you
So,
got that, which is
Is
most
3A gonna change the setbacks? I mean, it's a
No.
state-run.
The dimensional requirements are still what the R2, R3 district allows. It's just the frontage that might change because we might select a district and we want to make maximum parcels conforming. So the density, dwelling units per acre might change depending upon which district is chosen, and the frontage might slightly vary. But everything else is still what's on the ground.
Rebecca, do you have any sense of what the townsfolk, kind of want? I know we had a meeting where people could say what they wanted. Was there any sort of leaning of one of these zones over others?
So at the last public meeting, we did have an interactive map that was put out on our website, and we did provide promotional flyers to lead people to the site to try and give some input. I'm not sure if Supriya and Jimmy had those results, but we did have a couple of individuals who participated and did select of the zones that were already reviewed this evening and placed houses that resembled a certain style and/or would be something that they would like to see in that particular zone. So I'm not sure if you have any of those results to share, but I don't think it was a very large showing
Sure.
of interaction, but I do know, based upon the workshop that we held here, in addition to that, there was at least 10 or so comments that were made.
but none of those, because I was at both of them, none of those were choose a preference of what site you would like to have. It was the style of housing, the style of housing that you'd like to see in those locations. It wasn't we prefer to have this,
Right.
this site instead of another site.
Well, I mean, they're asking us to pick.
I know, I
And so if,
didn't know if that's what we were doing, didn't know if we were doing that tonight, but we have to have that
You
for
need to
town meeting.
select a zone in order for us to move.
Can that zone be
Tonight?
changed?
It doesn't have to be this evening. We can continue to the next meeting and discuss further, but we do need to select a zone so that we can incorporate that as part of the zoning that will be presented at town meeting.
If we select the zone tonight, and then the town decides to adopt the zoning, the 3A zoning, can we amend the zoning area later on, or once we pick that zone, we're locked into it?
Right, so can we
I
get,
would imagine that you can amend the bylaw at a later date and still meet compliance if in fact the zone that you did want to change to at that later date met the parameters in which they set per the like regulations. So I do think that you could make a change later down the road, but you would still need to meet the requirements that were set forth, and it would still need to be approved by the Attorney General's office, et cetera, in order
Right.
for it to move
Yeah.
forward.
yeah, so essentially, as long as it doesn't bring us out of compliance, we should be fine.
Right.
Yeah.
I mean, we have 5 options here, so if the town said, if we chose,
Right.
say, Washington and Main Street, right? And 90% of the town is like, absolutely not, it's not where I want it. I'd rather have the school in Pleasant Streets at the 8 acres. We would have the option to at least change it if we wanted to.
Correct, and I think as Supriya and Jimmy stated, that the actual zoning dimensions are very similar to what we currently have, if not the same, and one of those being the maximum height of the structure, so you're really only looking at 35 feet, so that's what we have currently. So you're not gonna see the type of development that can be a little frightening at time, which is the sky rises, the
Right.
Avalon-style type of development. They are still held to the height restrictions, the setbacks, et cetera. It really is the frontage and the style of housing and some of the other design type of situations that we're discussing this evening.
so as I'm looking at these, what I'm trying to find is objective differences between the different zones. And the only thing I've heard so far is substantively, well, 3 of them seem to have public transportation, and that seems like that would be something you would want if you wanted, ultimately, a larger group of people in a place. But other than that, I haven't heard anything to really distinguish A from B from C from D from E. So, is there anyone here that has something objective that mitigates for one instead of another for any reason that's not just cause?
Well, I was gonna ask just for clarification,
Jason has something to say.
just real quick, what's the minimum number of unit capacities that the state is requiring?
130.
130? Okay, thank you.
Go ahead,
You had something to say.
go ahead.
When I looked at these, Washington and Main Street I liked because it's a one-way, and it keeps the traffic and the additional traffic that would happen away from 97. So it's also why I requested Salem Street, because that keeps it away from 97, which is full of traffic. It pushes people right out of Groveland, if they're traveling, to go to 495, to 93, to 95 if they're heading north. So it's going to minimize additional traffic inside of Groveland. Also, these are all houses that are capable of being converted to multifamily homes, which is like the house here at Perry Park, which we all know, which is in compliance with the MTBA 3A law. And that's what it would look like, just like that, what's here in Groveland already.
So
No
Salem-
big changes.
Whereabouts in Salem Street is that?
It's very close to this is the Haverhill line.
So that's the baseball field right there on the bottom, the green.
You want me to put the
Got
area?
192
Yeah,
units,
please.
so there's gonna be a lot of traffic on Salem Street.
I mean, yeah, but
Can't discount that. I mean, you don't know if they're taking a right or a left out of that development.
No.
Right.
You're gonna go one way or the other.
Right.
Some of it's gonna go that way, it's gonna leave the area.
Right.
Some's gonna go the other way. I think majority of them are gonna go south, because that's why 97 is so packed as it is.
Right.
Well, plus everyone jumping the border as well from New Hampshire.
I'd really like to see also, like I said earlier, the breakdown of what percentage of those lots are already meet that requirement? Like, what's the highest rate, what's that highest rate? Is it
Yeah.
one lot's 90% already hit, or is it 100%? I mean, does one already meet every expectation in those zones?
And then, let me finish.
Yeah.
Yep.
Before, the other reason why is, there is no sewer here. So there's no developer that's gonna come in and buy 3 or 4 lots and put a large unit in unless they put sewer. And for a maximum of 150 units, I don't think that is gonna be very conducive to a builder putting in sewer. So I don't think you're gonna have somebody that's gonna buy up several different lots, knock those buildings down to put in a large apartment complex.
How
Not gonna
close
happen,
the treatment plant is right up the street in
which
Bradford.
is fine.
But we're not required to provide the infrastructure in order for these units to be built. The actual person who wants to move forward with it would be responsible for bringing in the infrastructure that would support the development.
Right.
So that's not what this zoning does. The zoning allows for them to do it if they want to make the investment in order to do so. And if they cannot, must meet Title V, in which case must have more area in order to support a septic system, et cetera.
Right.
They could tap right into the Bradford sewer system, possibly, right?
And then is there a benefit to the Washington Street site because it's got so much more capacity?
Nothing stops at one town.
It's the largest of the areas.
Yeah, it goes from the 30,000
And
to
you
20,000.
and Jason said it's essentially one way, so traffic is flowing away from 97, which is smart.
Again, it's gonna go to Salem Street north or south. And if they go south, they're gonna be Washington Street.
With this much acreage, so the unit capacity with 15 dwelling units per acre is the minimum density we need to maintain, and the unit capacity for this one jumps up to 295 almost.
That'd be a hard sell at a town meeting.
I see.
Yeah.
So the two factors that have to be met are 130 unit capacity and 15 dwelling units per acre. So if so that jumps up to 294. Which again, doesn't mean that you have to build that much, but it's just.
No, understood, that it would be easier to build more. Got it.
Where's the lease building gonna take place on?
Your first one right there.
Perry Park.
Park.
And one of the reasons that we had explored those two particular areas as well is not only because we are part of the Merrimack Valley Transit and have a fixed bus route in that particular area, and it is closer to those resources, is that those are some of our older neighborhoods, so they already predate zoning, so they are already non-conforming lots and are smaller in size in general, because that's how the community was founded, on those smaller lots. So it did kind of provide a little bit of an understanding, as Jason had said, of what's currently there is what you would get if you were to actually develop. So it's not
Gotcha.
necessarily like you would be tearing something down to create something that already existed.
Gotcha.
Those two options provided a little bit more of that, in addition to the Union to Gardner Street as well.
Do you have a preference?
I have no preference.
Perry Park? But I'm
What's
sure
the-
anything that you have a preference for, the residents in that area are gonna be happy.
Well, that's
Correct.
natural. But, so Jason, as between the two sites that you were looking at, do you prefer Salem Street?
Yeah, because I think that's gonna take the longest to develop. I think you're looking at 20, 30 years before you get any significant increase in traffic or anything.
And you think then that it would be most palatable at town meeting to get passed,
I think,
for those reasons?
Yeah.
I think we talk about this and go to one more meeting. I wanna visit,
But for what reason?
because I wanna go down and take a look.
I mean, I can say as a resident myself on an abutting street to Salem, I think I would be in favor of Salem, because I think that makes the most sense for the town to be in compliance.
But you can't just, my worry is, okay, you're thinking, you're speculating 20 years, but if somebody comes in.
Well, then they
get
have
it
to
done
put
in
in,
2
they have to put
years.
in a massive infrastructure to make it even
But,
work.
but I
Might not
mean,
be fiscally possible.
I mean, that could be any building site anywhere, right? At any time, someone could come in and say, you know what, I'm gonna pay $1 billion to all these people to give me my home, to sell them their homes, so I can build a massive complex. Is that likely? Probably not, right?
Not for 140 units. You look
Right.
at Salem Street, it's 292.
So, I mean, so,
192.
You go back to the overlay on
So you're
Salem
kind
Street.
of, you're pretty darn close.
yeah. Yeah, I mean, what I'm trying to say is that as a resident, that would be
Effective.
the next street over,
Yeah.
you know, my street's on that map there.
You're in a butter.
I'm in a butter, and I would be okay with that being the selected zone, because I think the risk is negligible.
So I think what we're getting to is as minimally invasive, likely,
Likely.
as possible.
Well put, yes.
And so Jason's laid out a couple of reasons that, that make that so for Salem Street over some of the other ones.
Is that
I-
habitat? Is that a priority habitat?
Those were lands that we could not include as part of the model, from my
Yeah, so you're-
understanding.
Yeah, so your excluded land as priority habitats are in the green here. Those include other things like wetlands and things like that.
Is there any of these models that are in priority habitat by any chance?
Yeah, so this green area, right? So you wouldn't be able to develop
Yeah.
on that, but you could develop on other parts of the parcel.
What I'm getting to is any of the other areas in habitat areas. That'll make it easy. If you can't build, you can't build.
Right.
That's one of the reasons too, when they had to
That's why it's
adjust the
going to review by
modeling.
them.
Right.
If it can't be built, they'll reject the plan and you're
Well,
not.
there's a priority habitat, there's right there.
Right. I mean, to
Right.
Jason's point, if we say, hey, listen, here's this plot that's completely unbuildable, but, you know, we're zoning it here, they're gonna tell us to no, send it back, please pick another lot where building is actually possible.
You buy yourself some time.
So are we comfortable that each of
For
these
what?
zones is would be green lit?
So basically, when we were working with his associates as part of the monies that we received from the state to have help with developing the zoning for compliance, that was one of the things that they had done as part of their scope of services, is to make sure that it met the model that the state had put forward. And that's what Jimmy specializes in, and that's what he had been able to provide us. So we're confident that these specific districts would comply. Obviously, if there's an issue, the state would alert us, but they were very specific in the beginning about monies that they gave us with the Massachusetts Housing Partnership in the beginning. We worked with Horsley and Witten, and they did some additional modeling for us. So I think that we're pretty confident in that regard.
Yeah, so these options are all compliant. If you were to submit this zoning today, it'd be compliant.
Okay.
The excluded areas, we're confident that that's long-term? Always,
Parklands, that's wetlands, that's environmentally sensitive areas, so those have all been excluded.
something that it
And that's where the-
would not be able to change 20
Oh, the
years
map
from
could
down the
change.
road?
The map changes. Habitat maps do change.
Well, habitat does change, but I mean, you can still build in a habitat priority area. It's just the amount of permitting you would need to go to in order to do that.
Right.
Okay.
And depending on where you are within the priority habitat area. But the excluded land is pretty set out. One of the maps that was shown in the beginning kind of showed you, again, anything that the town owns, 150 Center, we own it, that's excluded land. Again, wetlands would be excluded, environmentally sensitive land, parks, anything protected under Article 97, all excluded. And you could get something out of Article 97, but you would need to go through a legislative process in order to do so. So, I mean, Brad is not incorrect. I mean, nothing is safe forever.
Right.
But it would be very cumbersome to try and get something removed from that protected status.
150 would be easier for someone to get than it would be
Depends on where.
wetlands.
Well,
Right,
150
that's,
has.
that's my point,
150
is,
has habitat in the back.
Right, but we're not putting 150 up for
no,
consideration.
that's
No,
not
we're
what
not.
I'm saying. I'm just, for
Yeah.
example,
Yeah.
if you have a piece of property that is owned by the town, it's much easier. If the town says, I want to sell this land,
Right.
someone could put a development on
Yeah.
it. Whereas if it's wetlands, it's unlikely that any builder's going to come in there and say, I want to build
Right.
over wetlands.
Yeah.
So going back to the highlight, we have to pick tonight, or we do not have to pick?
You don't have to pick this evening. We can continue this conversation to the next meeting. I think Jimmy and Supriya can get you some information in regards to what DJ, the chair, had asked in regards to what's currently existing, and you can do some comparison, and you can do your own due diligence, like Brad said, drive out to the sites and
Yeah.
take a look on a real-time view, and then, come back the next meeting and kind of solidify the details. But if there is anything else that the board had recognized as part of the zoning that was included in your packet and some of the things that Supriya went over earlier, those are things that would be helpful to us if you could weigh in on, so that we can then during that time, take things back, discuss, and figure out how we can make sure that the zoning reflects what you're looking for, and as well as compliant, so that we know that, or feel confident at least, that when we do submit it, and if it does pass, that the Attorney General will approve it.
I think it makes sense, like Brad said, to give it at least one more meeting for us to all reflect on these various sites, and to maybe do some of our own due diligence as well, and then come back together and make what we think is a good final determination.
Can we get some addresses on that, like where proximity is, so we could take, if we go take a look?
100%. We can get each of the sites, and then we can get some of the information, follow-up information, and we can put it together, a little packet for you, and give that to you in the interim, so that you
Doesn't
can
have to be
have it.
crazy.
And the maps that are online with this is on that you can
Yes.
see all that as well.
Yeah.
With that Salem Street parcel, with the habitat, I'd like to know how much acreage of habitat there is.
Yeah, we can get all that information for you. I'll work with Rebecca and get a spreadsheet for you regarding
That
the
habitat grows.
percentage of lots that meet the requirement.
Yeah, because
as well as
I think if
site
Perry Park,
addresses
say
and-
Perry Park and Salem Street, right, are two lowest acreage, well, not lowest acreage, but
Lowest
lowest
unit capacity.
unit capacity areas, if 95 or 97% of those lot sizes meet the requirement already, that the overlay does not make much of a difference. If it's already hitting that. And now it's just a matter of you're able to build a three-plus family unit on top of it if you'd like to.
Would we be able to agree today as a board that we have a shared interest in having as low of a unit capacity as possible within reason? I mean, so the first three are within 10 of each other, basically, 11 of each other. And the other two are a little bit bigger. Are we prepared as a board to essentially exclude those last two and focus on Perry Park, School and Pleasant, and Salem, say, as our three targets?
I think I'd agree with that. I don't know why we would need to shoot that big.
And I think, well, and again, one of the overarching points about what we select is that we want it to be as palatable to the town meeting as possible.
Exactly.
And so it seems like going bigger than we have to is kind of overreach, and, will be a tougher sell. So I think, for me, at this point, I would be very comfortable to say that I would want to pick one of those three, either Perry Park, School and Pleasant, or Salem, because the unit capacity is significantly lower.
I would tend to agree with that. I think my mindset would be as minimal in an area as possible to be within compliance.
Right, and those three are within 11 units of
Right,
each other, so,
right.
I think of all of them as essentially identical that way.
No, exactly.
But my only point would be if Union and Gardner Street, if those lots are, say, that's a 99% of those lots already meet the requirement, that could put it back into play as well. That you're not restricting, you're not
So,
changing
so
anything.
you want to get the information, I think that's okay too.
So
Just
are
that
you
part of
asking
it.
if they meet the unit capacity currently? Like
What
units
we
on the
would be,
ground?
what we'd be changing it to.
Okay.
So that, if we're dropping from 20 to 10,000 square feet, how many already meet that 10,000?
Okay, just in terms of dimensions. You're not thinking about units.
Nope, just
Okay,
the,
okay.
just the actual lot sizes.
Okay,
Because that's,
okay.
that's one of the changes we're making, is the
Yeah.
lot size change. I want to see if
Absolutely,
we have
yeah.
97% of them already meet the lot size, then there's really not much of a difference to the lot
Yeah.
itself.
Okay.
The ownership and what people want to do with that's different. We can't control that. But
You still want to protect, the town. This was
100%.
This was thrown in our lap, and it's a crappy.
it's a tough,
It is
it's a tough thing that's been put on us.
I don't like it
100%.
at all.
But, I mean,
Tell you how I feel.
there's a difference between, though, protecting the town and.
Yeah, no, I get it. The residents of the town.
Being out of compliance to the detriment of the town.
Well, right, exactly, and we've already seen a court case come up, and, the writing's on the wall that we're gonna have to comply.
Has it come down, summary judgment or anything yet?
Yes.
There was a
done.
ruling that said basically that what they're doing is gonna be permitted. They have to reestablish, the
Have to
sort
write a
of,
letter of impact.
Right.
the framework of the administrative part of it, but substantively, it's gonna be able to go.
So-
So we've gotta be able to be ready to move this forward, because it's gonna be, the other option is we get sued and lose funding, and we end up losing anyway, and
Right.
it's
Exactly.
it'd be a catastrophic
There's gonna be-
legal problem for our.
There's going to be a lot of homework that I'm going to have to give Rebecca to get me in order to present this in front of the town.
Sure.
Some of those things, but as far as tonight, I think we've heard, we have a good, we have some feedback that we need to get, and,
No, I
We
agree,
can
but
come
you
back-
don't want to make any mistakes with this one.
no, I agree, none of us do, but we can.
But the one thing to remember, and I want to just say this in terms of any zoning, is nothing is forever. So, I mean, while there's some development could happen or something, you can change it. So just because the zoning is in place doesn't mean that you can't have a special town meeting and change it at that special town meeting. So it's not like, I mean, while we should get it right 100%, any of our zoning, just like we saw with the battery storage, we made mistakes.
Yeah.
So we passed it last year, we made mistakes, we noted those mistakes, and then we actually are trying to correct them this year. And to be honest with you, nobody's come forward with an application, because it was just a year. So it takes a while to make the investment and get the capital and have a developer ready to go. So just, while I admire the desire to get it right, I just don't want you to put too much pressure on yourselves too, because we do have the ability to change it. It is not forever.
Well, I mean, those
also-
changes would have to be at town meeting, and so this is going to be a very contentious thing, whereas battery storage is not. And so, I mean,
this is gonna
so we want to come with a pitch that is the most palatable to the people who are going to be voting at town meeting, understanding that this is something we probably have to do. And so we want to make it as painless as possible, understanding
So
people
pitch
will
a
not
plea.
like it. Right. Huh?
It's not a pitch, it's a plea.
Wow.
And that's what I mean by
Yeah,
homework.
essentially.
I'm gonna have to really,
Put on your
Help people.
Salesman suit.
it's not even about selling it, it's let people understand what it really means and how it portrays and what we lose, what we gain. That's, I don't have to sell it, I just need to explain it so people can understand it, because there's a lot. We're having a lot of questions, and we do this on a regular basis with lot sizes and everything else. The common person doesn't know that. So we need to explain them, say, okay, if we don't do these zoning changes, we are susceptible to X, Y, Z, and we just need to kind of sell that. So I would like to move to continue.
I think we have.
Please,
You have one-
something
we have
from
one
the
question
audience
before we
wants
move
to-
on.
Someone wants to come in.
Sure.
Thank you. Brian Canizaro, 27 Groveland Commons. It's really a technical question. I don't know if these two people can answer, or maybe you can. But it seems like that you're looking at one particular district. My question is this: can you define multiple districts for this new 3A law and share the 130 units amongst those districts? Therefore, the impact would be less to that specific district.
You
I think he's
cannot.
asking if you can have
You
multiple
cannot.
overlay.
I'm
lower
pretty, you can
density.
confirm, but you cannot. It has to be,
It has to be just one district defined.
It
You
can't,
can have multiple districts.
you can, it doesn't have to be continuous. Contiguous, excuse me.
it doesn't have to be
It
continuous?
does not.
So I guess my question is, can you have, we'll say like
Yeah.
Perry Park, or say
Smaller
Washington
area,
Street,
smaller area, smaller area.
define those as the new districts,
Yep.
and then share the 130 or whatever the maximum we're allowed amongst those. So in other words, if you, I don't know, let's say you matched out 130 at Washington Main Street, then you can refuse Perry Park, because now you've met that requirement at this
I
particular.
think we can,
No,
you
No.
can change it as
once it's
special,
zoned, it's zoned.
Zoned, okay.
Right.
not, but we can always go to special meeting.
No, right, but to your point, we can say smaller area here, smaller area here, smaller area here, so that collectively, that meets the zoning requirement when, in totality.
If I just may clarify.
Okay, thank you.
I just want to clarify. So you can actually choose a bunch of separate districts. The way the model works is one district has to be at least 50% the larger size. But for example, if you were to split Union in half and get 100 units here, you could get 30 units from Salem Street. You can do that.
Okay.
So you can do multiple different zoning districts, but the numbers just may change regarding the unit capacity and the density, but it can be done.
But one of those zones has to be 50%.
Yes, and then it takes into consideration the excluded land, et cetera, because then when you draw your borders, you gotta just make sure that you have enough of the acreage that meets the
Yeah.
requirements that doesn't include the excludable land.
Because the excludable land is factored in.
And
It's
you
that's-
cannot count that,
yeah.
correct?
And the design perspective of having one district is to have cohesive growth. Having smaller districts, while makes sense mathematically, it sometimes doesn't make of how that area looks. And some section randomly being a different density versus a lower density can look and feel different.
Well, and also to Jason's point, if you have multiple small districts, they might be easier to build than one larger district that doesn't have certain infrastructure or things like that, in place, right?
And I think so she's saying we have a small area in the district. Now all of a sudden you have single-family homes, and then boom, you have a 9-unit building
Yeah.
just randomly thrown in there, and then another unit, instead of keeping it kind of uniformity throughout one area and kind of keep that. Gotcha. Thank you. Good
That's a
question.
great question.
Yeah, appreciate it.
Helped us out too.
Yep. Okay. You guys good to continue the next meeting? We already have the next meeting scheduled, so is that enough time?
For us, that's enough time. It's just, again, if you have any additional comments on any of the other language that was proposed this evening, that would be helpful if you had some feedback.
Okay.
What date's the next meeting? Just so we can.
It's the
2 weeks from today?
18th, I think.
It should be the 18th.
18th, yep.
I'll make a motion to continue.
Before you do that, are there any other questions, so on the zoning, the verbiage, anything like that, that we're concerned with? Besides, I know this is obviously a big one, it's picking an area, but the zoning verbiage itself, it obviously meets requirements, so that's, we have bare minimum, are we above and beyond?
Were there any pieces of the language that you were kind of this way or that way about on,
So
in
there's
the
the
drafting?
affordability aspect, which is an optional component, so getting the feedback from the board as to whether or not you wanted to consider that would be helpful, so that we can either include it or exclude it. The dimensional requirements depend on the district that you choose, so there's really nothing there. Renewable energy installations, I'm not sure if there was any wiggle room there.
And the permitted uses also depend on the district chosen. So.
Permit of use.
And in terms of the affordable aspect, as soon as you mention affordable, it's going to become much more difficult at town meeting. And you're limited to 10% unless you get special permission, if I remember correctly.
Yeah, I mean, I would prefer not to have the affordability aspect in there, just 'cause I think that's covered in other areas of town business
You have our
and zoning.
inclusionary bylaw.
Right.
We already meet you.
Well, the fee in lieu has been basically what everybody does anyway.
Correct.
That's
So-
always gonna be a number.
Wouldn't we want to capture that revenue to apply to housing? Because everybody does the fee in lieu anyway. And that's in here, that's in section G. And it's what we do in the normal. I don't know that, I wouldn't take it out because I'd be afraid to tell the people at town. Because what happens as a matter of course is everybody pays the fee instead of setting up affordability housing anyway. So what we're doing if we take away the affordability aspect is we remove fees that we would be able to use for affordability. Well, the same units are going in there as if they weren't affordable anyway. So I think my preference, and I'm happy to listen to somebody who felt differently, but I think my preference would be to have it in there and explain it to town meeting, hey, listen, this is what people do 100% of the time is what's happened. So we don't want to sacrifice these funds, which can be used for you, the townspeople of Groveland.
Yeah, but I don't
So these
think,
are affordable on top of it?
The inclusionary bylaw doesn't impact this particular portion of the zoning as stated under GA. So you would not be able to apply for the pilot, or sorry, payment in lieu
Yeah.
of the affordable unit.
Well, and if someone was applying for an affordable unit and we're above our threshold for affordable units, we have the ability to deny the request for the affordable units, right?
You would have to deny the request?
We'd have the ability to do so. So if we're above our threshold by the state for affordable units, but based on population, and someone comes to us with a request to build affordable units, we can deny that request if we're above the threshold, right?
Under your inclusionary bylaw?
Yeah. We have the ability to say no unless we're
Unless it has the 80%
unit.
AMI or less.
Yeah.
Yes,
yeah.
by the table that's in the inclusionary.
Right,
Yes,
right.
correct. My apologies.
No.
thought Jason had something to say. I was interested.
No, it just was mentioning that the payment in lieu of wouldn't apply. I mean, you're talking about apartments and multi-family units. You're not talking about individual homes. It's not like a subdivision, so she already.
So you think people, they would put affordable units in instead of?
No, you don't have the option. It's,
So then, so are we just spinning our wheels that this requirement wouldn't mean anything anyway?
all you're doing is allowing for 10% to be affordable. That's what you can allow for. You don't get an option of payment in lieu of or any of that.
Well, this says, in this particular, in G, it says you do. It says, under G4, payment fee in lieu, as an alternative to the requirements of paragraph 3 of this section, an applicant may contribute to the local housing fund as specified.
I would also like to point out that this kicks in only if someone is doing a development of 10 units or more.
Mhm.
And
So maybe if the town doesn't have, meet this requirement of affordable.
I mean,
But even if they're trying to do a development of 10 units or more, we have the ability to deny request for affordable units. If the town, if we,
the criteria.
if we feel it's not in the town's best interest to approve them.
all right.
All right, let's-
I'm still not understanding, and bear with me, I'm not trying to, take too much time.
No, again, I think at the end of the day, I think you're right. I don't think it necessarily
I think
hurts
I
to
don't-
have it in there.
I don't think a single developer that I'm aware of has chosen to do an affordable unit instead of doing the fee in lieu. Apartments, subdivisions, otherwise, right? Am I right or am I wrong?
I mean,
I don't,
I
think that's
mean,
the
we have not, as far as I know.
Right.
We haven't had any built either, right?
Right.
Because we typically don't have this type of build
well,
has not
no,
happened.
so that's why I'm asking,
Right,
because
yeah.
I don't know.
I agree.
Yeah.
And I would like to. But,
Yeah, I mean, to your point, I don't think it hurts now, I retract my previous statement. I don't think it hurts to leave it in there, because
because
one.
if you can exclude it
Right.
anyway, then you can essentially choose whether you want.
We can leave it in there, then there's the option of payment, or there's the option of the board refusing the application based on merit.
Sure, I
Right.
think that sounds,
And-
Yeah.
that sounds like the best of both worlds.
But Jason, your thought
No,
about.
it's fine, because it's already here. It's
Okay.
already explained here. This is fine.
Okay,
I wouldn't change it from what's here.
okay, all right, I agree with that.
Yeah.
Okay, that sounds good then.
No, thank you, Patrick.
Sorry, no,
No.
I'm sorry, I
No,
don't want
Not at
to,
all.
Sorry, don't let it happen again.
No, you were right.
Anything else that we should review?
The only other thing was the design guidelines that's listed under F2, and the development standards. Some of those I believe are required.
it's right here. Come on over. You can look up mine, I don't mind sharing. I'm a smart kid in class, it's okay.
No, you fail.
Not as built, but words. Like my words.
Seems.
Well, it talks about objective over subjective, which, that sounds good to me. And so,
So essentially, we'd have a design guideline authority, essentially.
Yeah,
Yes.
Yeah. So someone's not gonna be able to come in and put something up that doesn't match the character of the neighborhood, and we'll have authority to say, sorry, that does not match the character of the neighborhood, and it needs
Correct.
to be amended.
yeah, that sounds,
to me.
Yeah.
that also sounds good.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay.
Yeah, it's a great way to protect the butters. Yeah.
I wouldn't change that either.
So then I guess we'll go back to the drawing board on some of those outstanding items and put something together and send that out to all of you so that you can do your own due diligence by visiting the site, getting the addresses, giving you the information in regards to the current district and what's currently there, And then we will continue until the 18th to discuss the specific overlay district and any additional amendments you'd like to see to the language if you've had a chance to review any further.
Okay.
I would also like to point out that there is a project website where all of the non-conforming maps and excluded land and sensitive maps are all available online with all the project information. And there is also an online survey going on that people can participate in and pick what housing types they like for which units.
Thanks for the presentation. We
Yeah, thank
appreciate
you.
it. It's very
But
helpful.
that does not say where they prefer to have that location.
It does.
All right.
I'll make a motion to continue discussion on Articles 7, 8, and 9 to the next meeting on March 18th.
Second.
Motion made and seconded. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Unanimous, so moved. Thank you. Appreciate
Thanks
it.
again.
Thank you very much. Appreciate all the work.
Yeah.
And then we have number 10. Just the-
And number 10, nice, quick one. Number 10, zoning change, to substitute Board of Selectmen to Select Board and Selectman to Select Board member throughout the zoning bylaw to be consistent with the general bylaws. Anyone have a problem with that?
No.
None.
Nope. So as far as 1 through 6 and 10, we are all in agreement, and do we need to approve those? Oh, wait.
Do we need to approve?
Rebecca, do we need to make a motion to
No,
approve?
we approve, yeah, I make a
The-
motion to approve
To approve the zoning as drafted,
as drafted 1 through 6 by, in 10.
will you also be making a recommendation to town meeting in regards to whether or not you recommend favorable or unfavorable?
Correct.
Yeah.
The only
Would you like to
thing,
amend your motion?
but before you make, the
Yeah,
only
I
amendment
do
we
need-
have to
yeah.
make sure of is the 100 kilowatts that Annie, because Annie had
For the.
Typo.
the the
For the
storage,
battery energy storage, yes.
to make sure that's accounted for the
So,
proper way.
as discussed and amended.
Okay.
Yeah,
Go ahead, Brad.
She said.
I don't know if we can do what she said.
Why not?
All right, someone say the words.
Make a motion to approve well, just do Article 1 first, because that needs to be amended, the language needs to be amended, so I'll do number 1 by itself.
Yeah.
Make a motion to accept and have board favorable approval of
Recommendation.
board recommendation of zoning change number 1 to amend Article 7, battery energy storage systems to correct the clerical errors with a determination of whether the 70 kilowatts needs to be at 100 kilowatts or therein where it needs to be edited.
Seconded.
Motion made and seconded?
Yeah,
All those in
second.
favor?
Fast.
Aye.
Aye.
So moved. Okay. And then going forward, zoning changes number 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and 10. Make a motion to accept the language as written with board favorable approval and,
Recommendation.
what's that? And board recommendation, sorry. Board, planning board recommendation and to move forward to town meeting.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. So moved. Excellent, thank you. Good job.
Progress.
We have continued, we've already done the continuing of the zoning changes for number 7, 8, and 9 for the March 18th meeting. Next meeting is March 18th. All right, so public hearing is continued. Excellent, thank you. Okay, next up, 181R School Street. Discussion and possible vote on the permit for application of Groveland Redevelopment LLC, care of Louis
Minicucci.
Minicucci Jr., 231 Sutton Street, Suite 1B, North Andover, Mass. 01845, which received approval of a six-lot definitive subdivision plan labeled 181R School Street, Groveland, and associated stormwater management and land disturbance permit at 181R School Street in Groveland, Assessors Map 34, Parcel 13. Okay, so we talked about this last meeting. There is a draft in your packet that I hope that you guys were able to read through. There were some minor changes that we had made recommendations to that draft. I believe those were added. I'm trying to find the paperwork. Here we go. Last meeting, it was myself, Chris, and Patrick were here. Jason, Brad, you guys were not able to make it. I know
On a mission.
you were on mission, yeah. Jason was dealing with the school stuff, so appreciate it. Have you guys been able to take a look at this and have any thoughts, concerns? Have you read through the draft?
I did, I made several notes and discussed it with Rebecca.
Okay. Anything that we should be aware of? Are they
No.
changes, or are they just something to look out for?
Nope.
Oh, okay. So in general, you're in approval of the draft that has been written?
Yep.
And I'll say it again, the draft that they have put forth, they did a fantastic job of merging all of the best language from other subdivisions, as well as reaching out to their peers in surrounding areas to add in additional favorites. So, very helpful. I think,
There was just one thing I just wanted to put in, was just to make sure that when they do the street crossing, that Lou said that he was gonna make sure that he came back and fix it after, what, a year?
the what?
Give it, they bind it and they let it settle, and they'll come back and pave it again.
For the street crossing?
Yeah.
You mean on,
The water
on the current?
on School Street.
So we talked about it at last meeting. They need to, and hopefully we can get an update, or maybe something got worked out. So, the state is paving School Street in April timeframe. So they need
gotta
to
do-
have,
Otherwise, you can't open it for 5 years, right?
correct, so that's what,
So there's comments on that.
Correct.
And so it looks like since the last meeting, it looks like they've made some ground, and it seems like the things that need to happen are gonna be able to happen. Is that?
I could give you a 2-second update if you want. Eric Loth from Groveland Redevelopment. Right, Andy was kind enough to send around a series of emails, because that was the only thing in the decision that they said, oh, this all looks great. Wait a minute, we have to get out there in the next 4 weeks. So made some calls, and it looks like, the town is gonna work with us to allow us to get out there ahead of time and just stub utilities in. So I've got one site contractor that gave me a number already. I've got 2 others I just want to chuck on. So I don't think that's gonna be an issue. And otherwise, I think we're fine with everything.
Awesome.
The only thing that we were talking about is, if you can see in the comments that were included, is that in talking with the projects and programs manager, and to Brad's point, there are issues which occur when you do not let a trench settle in the timeframe before paving. We actually, if you look out on Billis Way, you can very much see that, the development, that you can see exactly where the water line went, and now there's, frost heaves over that particular area because the trench just didn't get a chance to settle before they paved over it. So there can be issues that occur without allowing the proper time. That being said, with the work that Arthur's been doing with our new policies, we now have a permit, a street opening permit, that you are required to submit in order to move forward with a project. As part of that, it ties you to a certain level of conditions that you must make sure that you meet. So one of which is to hold you accountable for a year to have to go back out there and fix the situation if in fact it's not taken care of. So what Annie and I and Arthur discussed is tying this decision to the street opening permit, which would make the developer responsible for going back out on site if in fact in a year something were to happen at that particular connection site. Because the other options that were included were just not ideal for anyone involved, whether it be not taking the project all the way up and then having the developer come back in and pave 10 feet beyond where the trench opening was, whether or not it was, just excluding it in general. So there was just not a really good enough option. And when we looked at the trench permit, we said, hey, I mean, if it says right now, if they were to go do the work now and we weren't even paving the next day, if something were to happen to that trench afterwards, they would be responsible for it. So the same would apply. So that's the commentary that we had, is that we believe that they would be able to get out there as soon as possible. We would promote that, we would help them try and get through that process, and then we would just tie them and hold them to the street opening permit.
So you tie that to a bond?
We wouldn't tie it to a bond, but we tie it to the street, well,
You
I,
tie it to occupancy? Or
would-
street acceptance?
we wouldn't necessarily be able to tie it legally to any of those things. I'd have to pull the street opening permit, and forgive me, I don't have it on me right now, but I can pull it up. But essentially, I believe there are ways for the highway to enforce such.
Take Billis. I mean,
Because it really is not necessarily something that the planning board can oversees, so
but it's hard to enforce.
you're not wrong. But when you look at the street opening permit, the way that it is, that there's so as part of the street opening permit, a performance and payment bond in the amount of $5,000 is required for each street opening permit. So there is a bond that's associated with the street opening permit itself. Under no circumstances will this blanket bond be less than, is that 5 million? No. The town of Groveland may allow a blanket bond commensurate with anticipated permit activity for routine excavators. Under no circumstances will this blanket bond be less than 50, but that's for like a national grid or that somebody's doing like repeated work within the area. But there is a performance payment bond that would be associated with the work in the street opening permit. But again, that being said, we would just tie it specifically back to the street and sidewalk opening policy and hold the developer accountable to such. Is it enough to make them come back if something were to happen? I mean, just as much as some of the other issues we discussed, there's some things that, you
Right.
know,
We
are
can
not.
only control what we can control.
Exactly.
Always comes down to enforcement.
So we can try, and we can try and enforce the policy, and we can hope that we have a good working relationship with the owner and the developer.
Yeah.
And that we all want this project to go smoothly, as well as the infrastructure to be in place, and to have our roadways be safe and accessible, which would also benefit the owner, because then new owners don't have to drive down a road that they don't want to drive down. So hopefully, we can all come. to
No,
an
but we
agreement.
do.
The concern's School Street, right? That's what you're talking about, is the fixing of schools,
Yeah.
not actual 181R, street to be named.
Correct.
Right, no, it's
Yeah,
Schools,
always a problem.
yeah.
yeah, we don't want the state to do the nice new paving and then have it to sink in a little bit and have everyone need to drive over as they go through.
Are they just
as they
doing a
pass through
repave, or
the
they just, oh, they're grinding?
I believe there's, certain portions might need additional work, but I'm not certain on what portions those are.
I mean, that's, like you said, it's really hard to do because, I mean, I've done it, and it's depending on the year. It's, yeah, it dips, but you can't guarantee when it's gonna dip. It could be 3
If
years.
they
from now.
grind it, then it doesn't matter.
What's that?
If they do what they did in the first part of it.
On the one
If the
for
state-
the phase one for the TIP project, from Georgetown up to where they left off? That was,
Croya, that was a great project, but that's.
That wasn't grinding, they removed everything.
On page 5, we're talking about, we were waiting on TEC for some numbers.
TC has come back with
Okay.
with a number for, construction monitoring.
Okay.
Did they come back with a recommended bond?
I believe so as well.
Nice.
Do we know what it is?
Let me pull that up.
Mr. Minicucci, I say that right? Minicucci, good. The HOA, have that language been finalized at all or anything like that? Okay.
I don't think we need that right away. He'll need that before he signs off.
Okay. Any more discussion on, and his answer was no, I don't know, parcel A? No, okay. It's only been a week, I mean, I know that,
Oh,
yes,
right.
I got it.
And he's been looking at his stub problem.
When are you gonna start?
And I have the email from Bill Burnham over at TEC. It was sent on February 25th, but I was not included on the response. So I do remember that Annie had said that we had received the estimate for monitoring and the performance guarantee, but I wasn't copied on the response, so I don't have that number for you. But I do know that it was received because it says I will get it to you tomorrow morning, and I do know that Annie said we had those figures. So my apologies, I just don't have them available for you this evening. Can try and call Annie right now, but
No, it's
Oh,
okay,
God.
working, so.
not necessary.
Just, we can get an email, I guess.
Yes, I will send that over to you.
No, no problem.
You're gonna say should be higher than whatever TEC says, Brad?
I don't know what TEC said.
It's okay to get the information before you fight about the information.
And just because TE says it.
All right,
doesn't mean
enough.
that You could make it less than what TE says.
I'm gonna
wanna-
nominate
you wanna
myself
make it
vice
less?
chair and
It could be less.
You wanna make it
control
less?
Brad.
I don't know what the number is.
I'm just messing.
We appreciate your contribution, Brad.
But it should be higher.
All right.
I didn't say that.
Anything else?
Chair, if it's possible to ask a question.
Yeah.
In the past with the performance bond and guarantees, we've found it's very, very difficult to actually secure a bond. Maybe if you're Suffolk Construction, obviously, they can secure a bond. For us in the past, it's always been put up cash. It's like, you think you can go get a $500,000 bond for $5,000, but it's really put $500,000 in the bank. What we've done in the past sometimes with projects like this is tripartite agreement, where we put money in an account, and it's us, the town, and the bank. And when we meet certain standards, like, final top coat, you're holding money to make sure the final things are done. As that's done, you send your inspector out who says, okay, it's okay, you can draw that down. So the money that we're putting in isn't just kind of artificially sitting there, it's actually being used to build the road and do those final things. So I would just respectfully suggest that that's an option to look at, because we've never been able to get a bond in the past, and it's usually just a bunch of money sitting there doing nothing. I mean, protecting the town, don't get me wrong, that's good.
Right.
but-
We're gonna protect the town, but, we take insurance bonds, we take letters of credit, don't we?
We've done those agreements before in the past
Yes.
as well.
Okay.
Yes,
Just
absolutely.
something. Thank you.
We've done that, yep. Thank you.
Yeah.
Yeah, we take cash.
You guys have anything else?
I do not.
I do not.
I don't.
What do you got? I can see your mind working
good.
in there. I know you got
good.
stuff going on. Brad, you are reading through now?
No, I'm just flipping through to see if there's anything else.
So this is, what's the next steps here? Vote on the,
To accept the draft?
Possible vote.
Can we accept it without the figures?
That was my next question.
Good one.
Can you, I'm sorry, I'm just trying to see if it's in like the folder.
Can you accept the draft plan without the figures, is what Jason wanted to know.
I think if you're amenable to moving forward with what TEC proposes, I mean, is, in the
Well, they've never
past,
steered us wrong in the past, though.
I mean.
Hold on a minute.
Brad Brad might want to lower it, so.
In the past, you haven't necessarily said, oh, well, you should change X or you should change Y. So it is up to the board. I completely understand.
I would just say, let's see the number. He can't move forward. There's so much frost on the ground, he's not gonna move forward until after April 15th anyways. Would be my guess. Unless we get like 3 weeks of 70 degrees.
God, I hope so.
Not me, no.
Do do we make a vote to pass it with the condition of approving the number once seen? Or do we need to have a further discussion on it?
We may have to have no discussion, or we may want to have a discussion.
Right. So pending review of the, we can do it as
Is there anything
a
else?
acceptance with a.
Is there anything else in the draft that we need to review? I feel pretty good, like I said last week, I felt good
Yeah.
about the draft. I thought it was well put together. I thought there were very few issues with it.
Agreed.
And now the only fly in the ointment seems to be just the numbers, and if we're okay with the numbers, then, and if we're not, then it's just change the numbers.
Correct.
So, I would be okay with, conditional approval, subject to approving the numbers.
Want to fly a motion?
I'll make a motion to conditionally approve plan, subject to reviewing the TEC numbers in portion what? In paragraphs, looks like 26 and 29 of the plan.
I'll second that.
Any and all,
Any and all, yeah,
any and all, yeah.
sure.
I'll second that.
Okay, sounds good. Motion made and seconded to approve the permit for application for the Groveland redevelopment, and that is conditionally based upon the numbers we received from TEC, upon review of TEC, any and all numbers to, and if we do not align, then we'll come back and revisit on March 18th.
Perfect.
Yeah.
Motion made and seconded, all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
All right, so moved. You're welcome, thank you. Sorry it took so long to get you in there, but you got to,
Hey, thanks for
you
all
got to
your
see
work on
3A.
Yeah.
Okay,
Town planner update.
yep. Rebecca, let me know
Rebecca,
when you're ready,
update.
and I'll come to you.
I just want to look at one more
That's a
thing.
dangerous person to
Is
say.
that an email?
Trying so hard to find those numbers. We appreciate you.
I feel like I remember the conversation, and I don't know where it went.
Thank you again for coming.
Thanks again.
Good night.
Good night. Well, in the meantime, I don't know why you were too much worried about 3A, considering what the state has already released this next statement and the next move is gonna be.
I know, seriously, right?
I don't know if I've seen that.
They're gonna eliminate all single-family zoning
Right.
for all the towns. Oversized lots can no longer happen.
If you adopt 3A, or
No,
No,
everywhere?
everywhere. That's just what they're doing next.
basically what they said is the 3As are making enough of a dent.
Well,
I announced my
Well, then
removal
there'll
myself
be-
from the state.
There'll be a fight about that, and we'll see in 2 years what really the next.
Because Cambridge just went through, you cannot have a single-family home in Cambridge. Just passed this.
Yeah, they just passed it.
So if you do, you're a racist?
They did that willingly.
You're not, yeah, you're not allowed to,
I mean, this is mass, but
Okay,
there was a,
I think we're waiting for the town planner update.
there's an auditor letter
For the love of God.
that went back to Maura Haley that,
we talked about that.
did you see that?
We don't know how much weight it holds.
Rebecca, it's your
We're
turn.
gonna find out.
So I did miss here. So she said that we made the changes requested at the last meeting and still waiting on TEC for the number of the bond and the initial site visit deposit.
Okay,
Okay. So it's still conditional anyway, so
Yeah.
once we
Right.
get those
it's
numbers.
the same condition. Okay.
Because I knew I had that conversation. I knew we talked about whether or not she received it, and I just thought she said she did, but apparently she said she didn't. So my apologies yet again.
Stop it.
We will work better on that, but that leads me to one other conversation is that we are trying to fund the town planner position because it is, as you can see, can be very challenging for both me and Annie to try and get things organized for you. She's working on things, I'm working on things, we're collaborating on things, I'm attending the meetings, but she's talking to the developer, or TEC's talking to me, and then I don't get a chance to touch base with her. So we're kind of trying to do the best we can, and I've made a couple of mistakes so far based on the current arrangement. So we are hoping that we can put forward the town planner position. Unfortunately, with the limited funds that we do have, we're probably going to most likely need to try and do what we were able to do with Annie. Annie originally applied for the position to be an environmental program coordinator. She has an environmental background. She has no planning experience whatsoever, and you all know Annie, and you would not believe that based upon what she'd been able to do. So with the skill sets that you would need to be a conservation agent, planning kind of ties in to some extent. She also took the Massachusetts Conservation Commission workshops and things of that nature, so those can be very helpful, or the mass planners, which I believe some of you have attended in the past as well. So the idea would be to try and advertise a town planner / conservation agent position, so to combine the funding sources that we do have available to us, so that we can make the position more attractive, and hope that we can find a candidate that either has a strong planning background or experience with conservation, so that we can then try and train them internally with both myself and Annie, and have a designated person who would be here to help you all specifically. And you wouldn't need to deal with, did we do this? Did you follow up on that? Did this happen? And it will be more seamless in terms of your operation. So hopefully that will happen. I do know that the school committee is meeting this evening, and they are looking at readdressing their assessment potentially. Right now, I know that it's a 7% increase over last year's assessment. We have budgeted a 3%, and we can make that work, but I was told that they would not settle for a 3%, so whether or not they're going to come down, and whether or not we can cut our operational budget in order to meet those demands, or whether or not we need to go through an override, is something that we will be looking at a little bit more closely tomorrow. But like I said, on the town planner side, I did want to give you an update, because that would be something that you would all benefit, I think, from, and would hope to see that happen. Other updates, town meeting, reminder, April 28th, and 441 Main Street will be back on the agenda next meeting. And that was a continued meeting.
Yep. And just point of order, you and Annie are doing a great job. It's not I don't think anyone on this board is worried about what you guys have been producing for us. I know it's a strain on you guys to do it all, and the extra hands of help would be great, but we appreciate you guys doing what you do.
And I appreciate that, because I
second
can be a
that.
perfectionist at times, and
I would move for
don't
you
like
to
that.
stop apologizing.
Yeah, seriously.
Thank you.
I'm done with that tonight, so.
And that's all the updates that I have.
Awesome.
Excellent.
Thank you. So that means there are no other items that are not reasonably anticipated at time of the posting as well?
Correct.
None for
Good.
me.
All right. Next meeting is March 18th. We will re-review our notes there from our 7, 8, and 9. We also have the 441 Main Street as well. That's a public hearing, correct, still? That was continued
Correct.
public hearing, so that's another, a public hearing. So we'll have 2 public hearings that night?
Just the one for 441, as well as the MBTA 3A zoning amendments.
Yep.
Were they supposed to get us, I feel like they were supposed to get us an amended sort of like plan statement or something like that.
441?
Yeah.
Yeah.
It was like January, and they were like, okay, we'll get right on it.
They had pushed, they're the ones that requested this push out. So I
Okay.
think they're coming in with a new plan.
Okay,
I believe, we'll see.
okay.
We'll see
If
what
we do
happens.
receive any of those documents, we'll send them out to you as soon as we receive them, but we have,
We haven't seen anything
We
yet.
have not.
Okay.
I mean, if they don't get it to us, it'd probably be a very short public hearing.
I suppose. So.
And what about King Street? Is that what it was, King Street for the 8 acre, is it 8 acres or 6 acre?
A&R.
Huh?
A&R,
And
A&R, yeah.
okay.
Have we seen that at all back? or-
so they recorded the Mylar for the A&R for 102 King? Is that the
Yeah,
area?
that's sold. I heard that passed.
It did, okay.
Yeah.
I just received the email from Jay Ogden today, which is the recorded A&R.
Okay. All right. I think we're good. You guys, anyone else have anything? Questions, comments, concerns?
No.
Everyone's good? All right.
Motion to adjourn.
Motion to adjourn.
Seconded.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Motion made and passed to adjourn the meeting at 8:45. Thank you, Groveland. Good night.